Thanks. Well, thanks for coming out. It's great to be here. So I do have a confession to make to start out with, and that's really I'm fairly new to higher education. I've actually been involved in online learning for over 20 years now, but it wasn't until 3 years ago that I joined eCornell, and it was really my first exposure to applying a lot of the things from online learning into higher ed. And of course, higher education has a whole set of unique challenges and opportunities. And I've learned quite a bit just in those 3 years. And so with that, the agenda today is to really talk a little bit about what our goals are for online learning. And I'll talk about our initiatives and our organizations. Talk about some of the results and where we're planning on going. But I would encourage, if you have any questions as we go, don't wait till the end, just raise your hand, and if it's something I'm going to get to, I'll let you know. But feel free, the more interactive we make it, the better it's going to be for all of us. So I encourage you to ask any questions as you go. So the overall goals for Cornell, there's a number of different documents we have, but I'll just highlight the three kind of big goals that are worth mentioning. One is catalyzing instructional innovation broadly. So although this topic is online learning, you know, the goal of Cornell and many higher institutions is, of course, just to improve the educational experience, including, you know, for what would be traditional students. The second is to reach new students, and I'll talk more about this, and to generate revenue and make the program sustainable. So just to talk a little bit more about the catalyzing instructional innovation, this is a very high priority for our new president, Martha Pollack, who joined us earlier this year. Prior to that, she was the provost at the University of Michigan. But certainly, she, like most of us, see online learning as one component and one enabler of other educational innovation. So other initiatives at Cornell include innovating in the classroom, so things like flipped classrooms. We have an initiative on active learning. We have something called Engage Cornell, which is about getting students out into the community and out into the disciplines as part of their learning experience. And of course, online learning can be used as an enabler for all these other types of innovation. So if someone needs flexibility to travel, online learning can be, you know, some part of the solution to actually provide that flexibility. If you want to flip the classroom, the videos that are created as part of developing an online course can be used to actually, you know, flip the classroom. So these are all very much interrelated. It is also all about, you know, helping faculty see possibly other ways to deliver training. So that the overall goal is to, you know, is instructional innovation broadly. Make sense? All right, so second goal, reaching new students, and there's a number of categories here. The first is the thing that we'll talk quite a bit about, and the thing that I'm very much involved in, which is reaching working professionals. You know, micro-credentials, so these would be certificate programs as well as full degree programs. And a couple of examples I think you'll see in this presentation are certificate programs, as an example, a Women in Leadership certificate program that women around the world sign up for, and men. And a blended executive master's in human resources management. These are students, of course, that are working. They have families typically. They're located around the world. They're really not people that are going to come to campus for a 2-year program. So it's a very different audience. And sometimes it's hard to explain that to people, that there's no risk to the programs that may exist on campus. These are actually reaching net new students. Another is extending extension programs. So Cornell University is a land-grant institution, and integrated into its mission is extension. And, you know, there's extension offices throughout New York State, as an example. Online learning is a great way for us to be able to reach more people, even beyond New York and around the world. And one example is we have a great researcher and teacher in what we'll call non-suicidal self-injury, so kids that cut themselves. And historically, she's gone to conferences and talked to school counselors and parents and so on. But by having the ability to put that online, you know, we can reach a lot of additional people with that course, and they can get it when they need it. We've also done quite a bit in the area of food safety and so on. So thought leadership and awareness, and I was talking to Eric. I think University of Rochester has done some of this with Coursera. I was seeing the music of the Beatles, and so on. And one of the key things that you can accomplish is just make people aware of your institution that may not have otherwise been aware of it. So as I'll mention later, we have I think 12 different MOOCs on edX. I have a couple of them listed here: the Science and Politics of GMOs, and Sharks, Global Biodiversity and Biology. And again, I think the primary goal here is really just to make people aware of Cornell. And then there's also the idea that we might be able to attract more students into Cornell programs. And we did do an experiment. We created a MOOC called Introduction to Global Hospitality Management, which we tried to use as a introduction to get people interested in and even other professional certificate programs. As it turns out, it actually hurt the professional certificate program, but the next year, the hotel school did in fact have a very high number of applications. Now, some of which mentioned this MOOC on their application. So results are uncertain, though, as to whether it helped. And the third category I'll mention is to generate revenue. And I think what's important is there's a lot of ways to build and spend money on building online courses, but are they? We are very focused on building sustainable online programs that are high quality online programs. That we're able to have an instructor to facilitate student interaction and grade homework and things like this. And of course, revenue can support the mission of the university overall. Any questions so far? All right. So in a slide, this is going to be some of the initiatives that I'll talk about. This is not exclusive. We have does not include everything. But it does include some of the key things, and I'll talk about each one of these in more detail in a minute. But the non-credit professional certificate programs, online and blended professional master's programs, MOOCs, some things we're doing in the area of undergrad courses, and technology-enhanced learning, integrating technology into traditional courses. And these programs are supported by a couple of different centralized organizations. One is eCornell. And eCornell is an organization I'm responsible for, and it really focuses on supporting primarily the first three buckets. And then we have a Center for Teaching Innovation that I'll talk about in a moment that supports some of the other areas. And of course, Cornell being a very large, decentralized place, there are support resources in the various, there's 10 or more schools and colleges. Some have more resources, some have less that work with us. And there's also an online learning community, not unlike this group that tries to come together to educate and benchmark. So that's kind of the big picture of what's going on. And I'll dive into each of these in more detail. But first, let me talk about it from the organizational perspective. So eCornell. So eCornell has been around for 17 years now. It was started in 2000. Eric has some exposure to Cornell University in the early days, and it did not start out real well. There's some big expectations, like a lot of people before the dot-com crash, as to online learning was going to change the world, and just it was all going to be instant and make millions of dollars for everybody, and a lot of those initiatives never made it off the runway. Somehow eCornell, survived to today. But anyway, it's a unique model. It was actually funded out of the endowment, and there was a creation of a standalone organization with the idea that it would be accountable, meaning that it doesn't become a cost center inside the university. It has to generate enough income and revenue to support itself. And we have a board. I report to a board that consists of deans and trustees, and and basically help set our objectives and approve our plans. And of course, the purpose then, and I think now, is to help Cornell build a core competency in online learning, to reach more students and to generate revenue. So those I think have always been the key goals of eCornell. If I were to say in a nutshell here, Ezra Cornell, the founder of the university, had a famous quote: "I would found an institution where any person could find instruction in any study." We just like to think that we can help make that anytime, anywhere, and add that onto it. So the core of what the eCornell organization has done historically is what I call professional certificate programs. I distinguish these from graduate certificate programs that are sort of the ones that were for credit. The professional certificates are not for credit programs in topics like leadership, marketing, data analytics. I mentioned women in leadership, hotel revenue management, hotel real estate, just lots of programs. These are open enrollment, so it's not terribly selective. We're looking to make sure that there's a good fit, but not a lot more. We're more inclined to try to find a way to get people in rather than keep people out. The certificates vary widely from a month to a year or more. Typically 3 or 4 months is the typical length duration, and the typical price is around $3,000. And these, our focus really is on high quality sort of premiums, especially in a world of a lot of free stuff that's out there and free MOOCs. We're much more expensive than free. We focus on rigorous high impact programs. They're primarily asynchronous, so there's a start date and an end date, but there's a lot of flexibility for when the student can engage because they are working professionals. 35% of our students are international, so we need to provide the flexibility. Although we have increasingly had live office hours, we do have more programs that we're planning that will be more just live in nature or blended. The cohorts that we have going through together tend to be small, 30-person cohorts, and we really emphasize the ability to interact with the instructor as well as the learn from peers. Yes, Dave.
Do you have an active sales force that goes out to recruit, or is it word of mouth and people just sign up and register?
No, we very actively market. Yes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we both go after individuals as well as organizations. Yep. So that's really where we started and where we've been. When I came on board, one of the key objectives that I was given was to take some of these competencies and capabilities we have and help Cornell add online and blended professional master's programs. Of course, these are very different in nature than professional certificates. A lot of the course content can be reused, but they're very highly selective. They tend, and of course, students need to be much more committed, both in terms of how much it costs and the amount of time they're willing to spend. So, and of course, the expense is much higher. But it's recognizing that there's a lot of professionals out there that aren't really great candidates to even spend money for a certificate and commit to 3 or 4 months, and there's a lot of work behind it. We also are trying to do some things that'll help, things that someone like me would be interested in, just saying, I want to keep learning, I want to stay in touch in this category, but I'm really not able to make this commitment. So we did launch something called Web Series, which are it's actually, we have a number of different channels: hospitality, HR, entrepreneurship, women in leadership, things like this, where we have 1 or 2 1-hour sessions every month that someone can come watch. But what also is also recorded, so people can come and look at those later. And this is something we're still experimenting how to get. We get a decent audience, but not a great audience on these. But certainly we hear. We actually launched a new program with the Department of Nutrition. Certainly who also wants to stay engaged with their alumni. And this is a way of doing it. Okay. So, who here has heard of OPMs, or online program managers, like 2U? Anyone hear that terminology? Not too much. So I would expect. So there's a number of companies out there that partner up with academic institutions to basically provide a set of support services. And one way of thinking about eCornell is sort of Cornell's dedicated OPM, online program manager. eCornell partners with each academic unit. The academic unit really provides the oversight of the curriculum, all academic oversight, the faculty. To the extent that there's admissions or there's credit offered, that would be the academic unit. eCornell focuses on really providing a set of core competencies and support services that the academic unit doesn't have. So this would be design and development as it relates to online learning, basically providing the operations and technology and support, and marketing and enrollment. And I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. So we have a design and development group. Actually, it's led by Chad Oliveri, who's joined us here today. And they're very busy, but what they do is they engage with faculty to help them understand what online learning is, help onboard them to online learning techniques. And really there's two objectives. I guess probably the single biggest challenge that we've had, and I guess one of the biggest surprises that I found in higher education is just how busy faculty are and how many competing demands for time there are. So there's teaching, there's research. You say, hey, would you like to do an online course? And it's just like, yes, but, right? Can we schedule something in 2021? And so we try to make it as, we bring a very structured process to actually build the online course, but also try to make it as easy as possible for that faculty. So everything that the faculty has to be involved, of course, in a structured design process. They have to be, in many cases, the ones on video. They need to review the course, but we try to do everything in between, to do all the heavy lifting, and so that it as easy as possible for that faculty member. And of course, we provide the graphic support if there's animations, video studio, and things like this. Next category is technology and operations. We have an online delivery platform and registrations platform. We use Canvas, we use Zoom. We have a 24/7 help desk. So certainly with a global audience, we need to be there when there's issues. We have a student success group, which when students don't show up for their courses and or they need extra support, we try to help them complete it. We have instructors, essentially think of them as adjuncts and TAs that we recruit, onboard, and support and schedule. And we have, when needed, sort of registration and commerce capabilities, so that it's pretty easy to just add a program into the existing infrastructure. And then to the question, marketing and enrollment. And in many ways, this is where we spend. I certainly spend a lot of time on this as well, but where we expend a lot of resources. And so we go after two different audiences. One are individuals that are looking to advance their careers, oftentimes, or learn something new. And that's usually done through paid marketing on LinkedIn and Google AdWords and Facebook being kind of the primary three, and generate leads. But we also have a corporate team that works with, I say corporate, but a lot of them are just organizations. So for example, the UN wanted to upgrade the HR skills of people in the HR offices across the UN. So, they basically, it's very similar. We build what I'll call a tailored program, which is 90% the same as the standard HR courses, but tailored to address some of the unique challenges and issues that the UN has. And it's something they deploy globally. Of course, we try to do search engine optimization, content marketing. Once we have someone that's interested in a program and we generate a lead, then we have enrollment counselors that can talk to that individual and help identify. We have a number of different leadership programs, for example. What level are they at? What leadership program is going to best fit them? And certainly the only time we ever get into real trouble is if there's a student in a program where that's just not the right fit. So we try to spend a lot of time getting them into the right one, because it never ends well if you don't. So that's all about eCornell. Any questions so far? Okay. So I want to touch on, there's an organization I work closely with. And it's led by a woman named Julia Tom-Levy. It's a Center for Teaching Innovation, or CTI, if I start falling into acronyms. CTI, and we work very closely together, but CTI is focused on programs and services centered around the effectiveness of teaching and innovation. And so this includes a pretty broad range of things that they do. So it's just, for all the new graduate students that need, some basic teaching experience. We don't have a school of education at Cornell. But we cover the assessment strategies, and they're doing more and more in the area of data analytics. I think we're still in the beginning stages there. And they support course design workshops and really work with faculty to help them upgrade their courses. As it relates to online learning, they've been focused on MOOCs a little bit. So generally they focused on the non-professional MOOCs, whereas eCornell has supported the development of the more professional MOOCs. And they've also been involved very much in upgrading a number of the undergraduate courses that we have online, which I'll talk a little bit about. We don't really, our undergraduate online courses are very narrow in scope and audience, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I think, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a big push to apply technology and online techniques to support, doing better in traditional courses, especially maybe large lecture courses. So again, let me go into each one of these categories a little bit more. So I think I've talked a lot already about the professional certificate programs. Just to kind of give you some idea of scale. So last year we worked with about 50 different faculty members on these type of programs. We've generated about 40 certificate programs with about 100 courses. We had last year about 18,000 unique students. Many of those were full certificate students. Some of them are maybe within an organization that only took 1 or 2 courses, but not a full certificate. I think just to talk about some of the results, we do surveys as to how people feel. And does everyone here know what an NPS score is, Net Promoter Score? So Net Promoter Score is if you ask, one simple question, which is, how likely are you to recommend this course to a friend or colleague? And you get a scale from 0 to 10. If someone does a 9 or a 10, they're called a promoter. If it's a 7 or 8, it's neutral. And if it's 7 or below, it's a, help me out here. Detractor, thank you. And the Net Promoter Score is basically looking at the promoter, how many people say, give a 9 or 10, minus anybody that gives 7 and below. And so our score is 59, which I think we're pretty happy about. There's obviously room for improvement. Obviously, some courses do better than other courses. This goes way down if we have the student in the wrong experience. As far as online learning is concerned, though, especially where I came from before, these are very high, Net Promoter Scores. And then, of course, we ask other satisfaction surveys too. Yes.
Paul, is there still a distinction between eCornell offering eCornell courses compared to offering Cornell courses?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So.
Is it still in place?
Yes. So eCornell is really the brand and the destination site, if you will, for people looking for these professional certificates. That's the destination site. That's their market under. It's kind of co-marketed. It's still Cornell, and each of the certificates is backed by faculty at one of the schools, the Johnson Graduate School of Business or whatever it might be. Whenever we do something for credit, any degree program, anything else, we may be using a lot of the same services behind the scenes, but it's not branded eCornell at all. We're really a services organization behind that.
So the winter or the summer courses are really Cornell, count the credit, apply to, they fit into an undergraduate degree program.
Yes, and I'll talk about that. eCornell is actually not involved in those particular courses much at all at this stage, yeah. Generally not involved in those. Okay, so the second category, well, actually before I do this, I have a video to share, and I'm going to try to end this show. This video is clearly a marketing video, but it does a good job of doing a couple things. One is you'll hear very clearly who the target audience is of the professional certificate programs and what the value proposition is. But you'll also get some look as to what's in the course. So I thought it'd be worth spending a couple minutes on this.
Cornell University's online courses offer a flexible, rigorous, and engaging learning experience designed for busy professionals. You can do your coursework at any time of day, and there's no appointed time when you are required to be online. We design the experience to accommodate busy professionals in every time zone. And you'll learn with and from your peers, people like you, only from everywhere and from every type of organization. Courses feature Cornell faculty and the high-quality teaching you expect to find in an Ivy League classroom. Each of our online courses consists of a blend of learning activities carefully designed to deliver an experience that is both challenging and engaging. Expert instructors will give you the guidance and feedback you need along the way. And now you're ready to start the course. Your first assignment? Meet the class. Share a little something to introduce yourself to your fellow students. If you want, you can post a quick video. We keep class sizes small, so you will be part of a tight but diverse cohort of learners, and you'll get to know your online instructors. Courses are instructed by seasoned practitioners who bring subject matter expertise and years of experience. They lead class discussions, give you guidance on your assignments and projects, and they help you relate the professor's teaching to your own work. You'll have short readings and plenty of opportunities to check your understanding. Each course features a multi-part project in which you relate the concepts, tools, frameworks, and ideas from the course, and you apply them to your specific work circumstances. This is where your Ivy League learning experience joins you at work and follows you into your future. Welcome to Cornell.
Great. So that, I think, is probably better than I can explain exactly. You hear the messaging, right? It's flexible. You can do this. It works for you. I think one of the things that's important to note is that when we build the course, the idea is that this is actually a stepping stone again, and this is where we tie into achieving some of those other objectives. Not only can we build a certificate program, and oftentimes that's the easiest way to actually financially justify creating something, but the way the agreements work is that all the materials can be used to actually support any program on campus. So I'd like to say that all the faculty members we work with take these assets and use them to do innovative things, but it's not all of them. Some do, and we're going to try to make it easier actually for them to do it. We actually are on Canvas. The campus is using Blackboard. So there are some technology barriers, but I don't think those are the big ones. I think the real barriers are just thinking differently. And then, of course, these courses also really serve as the foundation to build professional master's programs. Many of, when we actually did launch about 3 years ago, the HR Executive Masters of HR Management, and that was based in large measure on a number of courses that had been built HR certificate programs. It makes it a lot easier to get started. So really, it's even though it's very much professional education, the goal is to have that impact ultimately undergrads as well. So a good segue into blended professional master's programs. Again, I've talked a little bit about this. It is targeting a different audience. These programs tend to be 15 to 18 months in length. There's just no way to get the number of credits needed in less time than that without it being more than a part-time program. And as soon as you go over 18 months, interest in the program seems to diminish rapidly. People just can't deal with 24 or 36 months, generally speaking. So this seems to be the sweet spot for us. We have one program, or we have other programs at the state awaiting approval, and then we have a pipeline of additional programs that we're trying to bring to market. They tend to be, we receive very, very favorable feedback on this. So we had a couple of people attend sort of the last get-together of the last cohort that just graduated, and they're hugging each other. You couldn't really tell that it was online. They definitely have very, very strong relationships. And I think that's partly due to the fact that they're blended. And there are, in this case, there's 3 one-week times when they get together over 15 months. And so the way this looks, there's a number of online courses. You can see the titles of some of those, things like HR Analytics, Aligning HR Strategy, Diversity and Inclusion in the program. Yep.
So if these are master's programs, are they actually registered with New York State then?
Yes.
And how do you fit 30 credits in 15 months when people are working full-time?
It's a challenge. They're very busy, so you have to be committed to it. Yeah. There are online courses. The 3 one-week intensives, there's a number of credits that are granted as part of the very intense 1 weeks, and then there's also quite a bit of project work that's involved. Usually the projects have something to do with their employer, but not everybody makes it through because you have to have set aside some time to actually make it work. You can actually see one of the cohorts, the picture of the one the cohort that just graduated there on top of one of Cornell's buildings. Many of you probably know this, but there's multiple blended models, and so the HR program I was just mentioning looks more like this, where there's online courses, then some 1 week online intensives, and sort of actually oftentimes a project or the ability to work with faculty or an executive sponsor of some sort. However, we also have done quite a few things where we've done prerequisites and as part of an online program. So a couple of examples, and a lot of times this has helped, it can be great for leveling up students. So if there's certain students that don't have certain prerequisites to get into a program, we can help them get to that place first. We just completed a project on chemical engineering for incoming chemical engineering residential program master students that didn't have all the prerequisites. There's a lot of calculus and things I didn't understand, but before they had tried to do that in a workshop format right before the semester, or maybe a little overlap, and it was really not so great. So now these students will take it over the summer before they arrive on campus, and that definitely worked out better for everybody. It can also be used in some cases to actually start a course before someone arrives on campus, actually start doing the first few weeks of something. And we've done that with the MBA program in New York City, some econ and statistics, where some of the work is done ahead of time online, but then they kind of continue right on campus. And then, of course, there's opportunities to use these online assets as part of even just an on-campus experience. Any questions? Yes?
If you're targeting on working professionals, why do you want to do a certificate program? Because now that they already get jobs, they don't need to put something on their resume to apply.
That's great. Well, I think that's a great question. So the question is, why do working professionals want certificates? And I think there's a couple things. I do think they want to put something on their resume and LinkedIn, and they do want to demonstrate that they've invested in themselves, and they may be looking to take the next step in their career, get promoted at the company that they're at, or maybe even switch careers into another area. So the certificate is actually very important to working professionals.
Okay, then my second question is, now that they want to use the certificate to apply for other jobs or graduate programs, so how widely is your certificate get acknowledged by the other universities or companies?
So the question is does the certificate hold value, in the workplace? And I'd say yes. I think eCornell is fortunate in that we've been around quite a while. But I was just having a conversation earlier. There are now the MOOCs, for example, that also offer verified certificates, and certificate, unfortunately, there's not a lot of regulations as to what it means to get a certificate, and for that matter, the MOOCs. edX now has a MicroMasters, which is more or less a certificate. Udacity has a nano degree. So it's just a world of confusing terminology, and I'm not sure how that'll all shake out. But so far, at least. Certainly, I do know from a marketing perspective that having the certificate and a certificate from Cornell is a meaningful reason that someone does it. Plus, I think having a very strong reputation, because there's very active social media, at least for our courses, people asking every day on LinkedIn, has someone completed the data analytics program at eCornell, and other former students, pointing, that's just the way it works now, right? There's a lot of, so I think having making sure that you have high quality is certainly very important, reputationally. Make sense? Great questions. Any other questions before I move on? So speaking of which, so massive open online courses, or MOOCs, and I see University of Rochester, at least parts of University of Rochester, have a relationship with Coursera, which is one of the 3 big ones, and even some MOOCs that look really quite interesting. I think the music of the Beatles is one that caught my attention, saying, I gotta, I'm not usually one to go look for MOOCs to take, but that one looks very, very interesting. So Cornell has a relationship with edX. We've developed about 12 MOOCs over the past 12 years. Just as far as numbers, we had over 200,000 registrations and over 2,000 verified certificates. Of course, utilization on MOOCs, the register drops off dramatically. It's in the single digits, and oftentimes the low single digits as far as actual completions. But I do think MOOCs really have accomplished a couple things. I think originally maybe, like a lot of institutions, you get caught up in the hype about MOOCs and everybody's doing it, you need to do a MOOC. And maybe not always thinking through what are you actually trying to accomplish by having a MOOC. Sometimes there's an idea that you're going to be financially viable in some way. But what I will say that they have done is they, even though Cornell had eCornell for 17 years, I think MOOCs kind of got some faculty more interested in online learning pretty rapidly than perhaps than eCornell had. And I think there's some benefit of more faculty exposure to innovative teaching techniques and getting faculty to think maybe differently about how possibly they could teach. So with that said, really over the last 2 or 3 years, the MOOCs have all pivoted from this idea of massive online courses to educate the world to something that looks almost identical to what the professional certificate programs. They all realize, hey, you know what? If we're going to stay around, we need to actually figure out a way to generate revenue. So, the emphasis now has been on professional programs. They tend to be small cohorts. They charge for them, right? Sometimes they're under a freemium model where you can take the first course for free, and then pay more to take the additional courses in that track. But they've all pivoted directly into something that eCornell already does. I do think MOOCs will have a part in our overall portfolio, but we're still exploring exactly what that is. I think it's also the case that MOOCs, I call them MOOC marketplaces or MOOC aggregators. It is also the case, let's take any given program. Let's take data analytics as an example. Whether you go to Coursera or edX, they're going to have dozens of data analytics programs. And at some point, it gets very hard to differentiate inside of that. And then, then that causes some level of commoditization, which drives the price down low. And you drive the price down low, then you take the instructor and the facilitator out of the experience. And, there's always the risk of getting to something that's not much more than just a list of YouTube videos. And so, that's, I think, whereas we're trying to emphasize more on the education experience, and we think that, certainly for at least the premium courses we have, having a highly facilitated strong educational experience is important. So we'll figure out where MOOCs. I'm sure we'll be working with MOOCs. Exactly what is undetermined. All right. Yes.
So you said these first 3 things are what eCornell focused on the most, and now you gave us a sense of the scope. So what kind of resources in terms of people you have to accomplish all that you have said up to this point?
Well, it's very dramatically. So as we grew our revenue, we were able to add people for sure. So I think it's been, the overall team size, I think, was really quite big in when it first launched, like 70, 80 maybe. And then it dropped, of course, to 15, after they struggled. And I think maybe it's been slowly growing over the last 15, 14 years. Today we have about 80 or 90 employees. Large number of those are in marketing and enrollment council roles.
How are they distributed between, again, marketing people,
Yep.
designers, supporting?
So broadly, our instructional design team, just big picture numbers is about 20, people, and then actually a pretty big network of contractors, especially graphics and animators and such, but even instructional designers. Then we have operations and kind of administration of maybe another 20. And then we have the rest are really involved in some way, shape, or form in marketing and enrollment. Yes?
Are all of your teachers either permanent lecturers or tenure track, or are you using adjuncts?
Well, that's a great question. So it's sometimes a little hard to explain our model for staffing because we have what we call the authoring faculty member, right? They're the faculty that we work with to design the course, and they're in all the videos. They're the ones that basically create the assignments. They create the rubrics for how to grade everything. And we'd love to have them be the instructor for the courses. Most of these courses start every 2 weeks, but most of them say they just don't have the time for that. So basically, they help us identify, essentially, we call them instructors, but they're probably better to think of them as TAs that actually do the grading. They actually facilitate the conversations. Now, they tend to be people with industry expert and pretty deep expertise. So, so there's the authoring faculty member, which we generally, most of the academic units we work with restrict us also to tenured faculty members, simply because the ones that are seeking tenure, generally have other higher priorities. Even though we think this should be part of actually the tenure, criteria, but that's my view. But then the adjuncts or the TAs, basically we have a number of different criteria for what's required, and the authoring faculty member has to sign off on whomever it is. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yes.
What is your decision-making process to select MOOC courses?
Well, the decision-making process for selecting MOOC courses, that there's basically a cross-functional committee that basically that included me, essentially the lead of CTI, and a couple of other people, and then a broader one. And so we asked for proposals from faculty members. They'd send in a proposal as to why they think this is great and what they would do with it, and then we would select a number of them. Great questions. All right, so let me talk about online undergraduate courses. And so to be clear, this is not I don't think anybody at Cornell at this point is looking to do a whole lot of change to have an undergrad online program or put a lot of the courses on, a lot of the undergrad courses online. I think the focus, is largely on how to possibly improve the overall undergraduate experience, as I mentioned. That said, there are a number of online courses. They're offered through the School of Continuing Education in summer sessions, and most of these courses are available just in the summer and winter, and 99.99% of the students are matriculated Cornell students that take them because they need some level of flexibility. Either there's a conflict or, I don't know, maybe they're trying to graduate a semester early, but most of the courses are taken in that way. The focus here really has been, since I've been here over the last 2 or 3 years, has really been, frankly, upgrading these courses to meeting some basic accessibility standards, because I don't know, just that are were required to meet, but also just some basic instructional standards. So that's been the primary focus. There's a lot of discussion now, however, in the future to build some of these undergraduate courses and really use them to support flexibility, more flexibility. So these are solving real problems that we have. These, with Engaged Cornell, or a number of our schools have kids in different parts of the world at all times, and there's, sometimes the student has to make a choice between going there and having to stay another semester just because they can't get all their credits in. So online can possibly be a solution to that. But there's a lot of complexity and a lot of policy issues and a lot of issues still with that. So for the near term, I think mostly online is used really just in the summer and winter sessions, for flexibility for Cornell students. And yes?
What's the typical cohort of the class size for these?
There's a couple different formats that they run in. One would be small cohorts, maybe 10 students, but a lot of them are also self-directed on, basically the student goes through on their own with the instructor. And eCornell generally hasn't been involved in this particular thing. Now, if we build a course that can then be repurposed or reused, then we hand it off to basically the units that run this course. It's already pretty complicated between School of Continuing Education sessions, the academic unit, and CTI. It's already a bit on the complicated side. Okay, technology-enhanced learning for traditional courses. Again, this is not purely online in the sense, and certainly, definitely starts moving closer to the core of what Cornell does. It's a high priority for President Pollock to innovate overall. The strategy includes a lot of different programs, as I've already mentioned, active learning, engaged learning, and so on. And if I were to talk to Julia, Tom Levy, who runs this group, she would also point out that, yes, this is all important. We need to leverage all this, but of course, technology is only one component of innovation here. And there's oftentimes, even things like using clickers in the classroom and other things. There's many things to do. But I want to point this out simply because there is a big emphasis right now on this particular piece. So kind of wrapping it up. So what's next at Cornell? Well, I think our goal is certainly to expand the scale of the certificate programs, expand the scale of the professional master's programs. We also have strategic emphasis on that academic innovation and using all these tools and all this experience to improve the experience of all students at Cornell, including those on campus, or especially those on campus. And one thing I'll mention is we also have an active group to discuss quality metrics and standards and how we actually apply those quality metrics and standards online. There's a number of processes in place, that committees in place within each academic unit to do that for the classroom courses. But I think our processes for dealing with this are pretty immature still on the online side, so it's something that we need to get nailed down. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions or hear what you have to say. Yes?
On that last point related to quality standards, are you using sort of national or, some programs like 2M? Or
Yes. Yes. So yeah, there's a number of templates that exist that sort of, but I will say that they're very broad. Some of them are very broad with a lot of criteria, and we also need to, and then a big. So that's actually probably the easier part. Maybe the harder part is who actually, how does that actually who actually does the review? How does typically faculty have a lot of flexibility in deciding what's good and what's adequate and not. Now, oftentimes that's good. Most of the faculty we work with have been very eager to receive feedback and say, I'll do something better. But at times there's the possibility of a faculty member not being open to it, and it's just not something we want to have up online. So how do you deal with that? Yes?
Who do you bump into from time to time as primary competition?
Well, it varies. So on the professional certificate side, it's MOOCs. Basically, we went from having a leadership certificate to the MOOCs now enabling 50 different schools to have a leadership certificate, free leadership certificate, or one that's $30 or $300 versus what we offer. So I think that's the biggest thing. That said, we're doing, right now we're still doing fine. We're still focusing on what we do well, and and I've been very much an advocate for. There's no win to taking prices down. There's no bottom. There's really not much of a future there as far as I can tell. So I've been an advocate for let's focus on just making sure our educational experience justifies the price point. But there are Harvard has certificate programs. Most schools, I don't know if most, but many schools have these type of professional programs. As far as master's degree programs, it's much less. I mean, there's far fewer in any given category, right? So in HR master's programs, there's far fewer competitors. I can't even think of a name right now.
Yeah, overall, I'm a user of both Coursera and edX, and this semester I'm taking biochemistry and photonics. Before the semester started, I want to look online, prepare myself for the two courses, but I didn't find biochemistry or photonics on either Coursera or edX. So do you think, I understand the photonics may be too detailed for the two branch area, but biochemistry is rather basic. So why isn't there any this kind of?
That's a great question. Why aren't there more courses on the MOOC aggregators? Well, I don't think there's any sort of centralized planning as far as the courses that go up. And I think Eric, do you disagree? Or just,
No.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's not a collective sort of decision.
Right.
Each individual institution is deciding
Right.
What they want to offer.
Right. And I would also say that, I think we're kind of still on a hype curve overall, as far as MOOCs, and every institution at some point is going to say, can I afford to put another $500,000 or whatever into this, and how much am I getting back in return? And in some cases, maybe they have a course where they're able to break even, or maybe they're able to justify it because it's great exposure for the school, or maybe they're able to justify it that they're creating assets that can be used elsewhere in other programs. But every school is going to need to decide, is this an investment I'm willing to make in building these courses? And so far, whatever these processes amongst 400, 500 schools, no one has selected biochemistry as something to put up online.
I mean, there's no competition on Coursera for biochemistry. So maybe there's a good direction for investment.
Maybe, yep. And I think, can you get someone to pay for biochemistry on edX or Coursera, right? Generally that's something that sounds very much, certainly that's more of what I would consider a core course in sort of an academic curriculum, and not necessarily something that says, okay, it's a professional course, I'm already in the medical field and I want to go somewhere else. That's a little bit of a different thing, right? And where people are willing to pay are probably at something that's I would consider more of a professional versus a core course. Same thing's true with economics. There's actually statistics you might be able to sell professionally, but but economics, it's a core to a lot of programs. But I'm not sure that once someone's out in the world, unless they can figure out how to apply that, it's going to be something they take as a professional program. Yes.
Thank you. I'm a librarian, so I'm curious about if you have in your team a library professional that gives support to those courses, if you work in collaboration with the Cornell libraries, how do you work the part of access to information and teaching the students the best tools and resources?
Yep. It depends on the type of course. So with respect to the professional certificate programs, we tend to try to make all the materials available right in the course and keep it as simple as we can. And so if we need to work with the library or we need to work with the faculty member and make materials available and make sure all the IP issues are worked out, we do that. When it comes to the degree programs, there's links to the library. It's just definitely more inside the system, if you will, and it's definitely the library is integrated into the overall UI.
As a follow-up to that question, one of the biggest difficulty I often find instructor has is finding good multimedia reading materials. And so that could be where the librarian could help. And I'm just curious how you solve the problem of finding good open source kind of materials.
Well, we don't use a lot of open source. We generally create them ourselves, yes. I mean, I would love to find open source. I think in some cases, I've actually asked Chad and the team to actually, this is accounting 101. Can we please find someone that's done something like this? Someone has had to create an open source explanation of a T account, right? But it's not really a high quality exists. At least that we've found so far. Great.
Any other questions?
I had one quick question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry. So in terms of the people who are approaching your professional certificates, do you find these are individuals, or do you have like a ratio of what individuals towards like employee-driven,
Yep.
employer-driven?
It's about 75% individuals and about 25% sort of employee-driven. Now, out of that 75% of individuals that are making a purchase decision, some percentage of them also get reimbursed from their organization. So more like maybe probably another 25% of that group gets reimbursed. Yep. Yes?
I was just curious if you've ever been approached by a department outside of the academia looking to use this as a support. For example, I am specifically in career management, so I was just curious if you've ever run into that experience.
Well, we're actually working with a career management office right now for the newly formed Cornell College of Business, which they have a career management. And so we're working on a program to put a number of resources about branding yourself and the things that they do online so that they become resources for Cornell students. And then we're also going to make that a library available to the professional certificate people as well. So yeah, that's something we're working on now. Great, thank you. Thank you.